I think what we're talking about is the long-term scarring that happens from a continual type of bullying, which is what I call it. And I've always thought about that. Like, I don't want to ever grow up and just, when my kids are old enough, to really look and reflect and say, you know what, my dad was kind of a bully. Yeah. You never want to be that, because I grew up in that situation where, because I was younger and I was smaller and I could be taken advantage of, older people bullied me. Now I know that, because as an adult, I was like, oh, I really got bullied because people could do that to you. I'm very cautious now of, like, am I crossing the line of being a bully as a dad? When I need to raise my voice, I think that is appropriate, but it's not appropriate to go farther than you should to make that point clear. You raise your voice sometimes because kids have to be disciplined, or, sometimes your parents spank their kids or whatever they do. They need discipline. Otherwise, they run amok and they become bad kids, and they're not good kids for society, people for society. And then at some point, we look like a failure. So parents have to discipline. But like I said, you can't cross that line of the continual scarring that affects a child forever.
But also, it's not even always like the yelling or anything like that I'm talking about. I just thought, like, sometimes it's even corrections. Like, I think I correct the kids a lot, and it's not because I want to be right. It's because I want them to be their best. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't allow me to let something slide. Not something as in them spilling something or those type of things where I know their coordination is still, but something I'm like, you could totally work on this, Especially with their speech. I think I don't let a single thing pass with their speech. Like, I will correct it instantly because I want them to be their best in that form. I want them to work on it. I want them to know it's important. But maybe that's not the way they're going to get that is important, by me constantly correcting them.
I understand what you're doing, and I think you and I have disagreed on this sometimes. I think in the last minute you said, I want, about 5 times. I want them to do this. I get it. I'm trying to give them the internal motivation that they wanted, because I know there's some personal change in my life or things that I accomplished in my life. No matter how much somebody wanted me to do it, I was only going to do it if I wanted it. And this is why, like, at night when the girls are reading, I correct them by saying, can you read that again? And when they read it the right way, I just say, did you hear how that sounded? Did you hear that you swallowed and there wasn't all that saliva? That's my approach versus, like, just say it again, or I want you to do this. So I think that we have to give kids the motivation so they see it in their own eyes with clarity, and then they want to do it.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. I said, I don't know that me saying or me wanting and going about it in that way is what's going to make them know that's important.
Well, it might be, but it might be bullying them as well. Just like I mentioned, like, there's many, and I'm guilty of the same thing. It's like, think of any dad who wants his son to be a good football player, a great football player at 6, 7, 8, 9. I want you to make a touchdown. I want you to be the star running back or whatever it is. And the kid's like, I guess I got to do this for my dad. That's bullying. That is a form of bullying. If we want our kids to make straight A's, I want you to make straight A's. You better study. I want this. But how can we get into the kid's mind and give them that motivation for themselves so that we all want it? Because once a kid has that motivation, then, like, there's no stopping that kid. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. Because
it's easy for parents to be like, because we can control them, because they can be manipulated. But we don't want to do that, because, like I've said, I think that is also a form of bullying, not just yelling at a child or beating them up or whatever. So
I think, like, trying to help them find the fire or the motivation within themselves for certain things sometimes is not the talking to or even correcting or trying to. It's sometimes like leading by example, so to speak. Because I will say a lot of times what they do is just a reflection or a part of what they see in the household. So let's take, for example, when we do videos, I think that there's so much fast talking going on in this household when we do videos. Like, just
sure,
everybody's trying to, it's all over the place. And I think that is a detriment to what we're trying to instill in them of the importance of, no, just take your time. No one's going to rush you. Just, do this. And that just carries on throughout, because it's, to them, it's like, okay, well, everybody talks like that, or we're all doing this, And I think sometimes like I'll say to you, like, Justin, like, can we try and work on, you're like, well, I'm 40, whatever, like this is what I do. They got to want it for themselves. I'm like, I agree with that, but I also feel like they're going to look at us and be like, oh, well,
Yeah, no, you got to lead by example. I think it's also important to touch upon in this episode, like we should talk about the perception of our own mom and dad. I feel the perception to us is great because our kids were very accessible emotionally and communication wise. Like they can talk to us about anything. And like, it's very healthy because if I were to raise my voice too much, the girls would come and talk to me. They'd be like, Dad, you're kind of raising your voice sometimes. That hurt my feelings. That is great. Like the fact that they can do that and they will do that, that lets me know that like we have this great relationship. Mm-hmm. I definitely couldn't do that when I was growing up because I get slapped. I would just get backhanded.
There was definitely no option to voice.
So is it generationally or is it or specifically to us? I think it's more generationally, but how is it, you talk about the perception of our kids to us. What was the perception of you to your parents and wonder what they thought it was?
I think generationally, yes, but also I just think there's just different types of people. Mm-hmm. Even though I grew up with my mom in the generation of how she was parenting, I didn't want that type of parenting. So it wasn't like, I was like, oh, that's just, just what they do. That's their generation. I was like, no, I wish I could talk to my mom. I think it's just the person that you are. Maybe some kids grow up with that generation of don't say anything, you don't have an opinion. They're just like, okay. Mm-hmm. Or some kids grow up like, man, when I am older, like I'm just going to do the opposite. Like I want my kids to talk to me and I want them to be able to express their opinions respectfully, obviously, but want them to know that, hey, like you matter too. Like it's not just a dictatorship. In the end, I'm going to make the best decision for you and for the family or what we feel is best. But what were you saying? Mm-hmm. So we can hear it and say, oh, I didn't think about that. Maybe you have a valid point.